Do you think you're not smart enough to succeed? I used to think the same way. I sat there, writing plans, analyzing risks, imagining thousands of scenarios, but I never took action. Meanwhile, those with fewer qualifications and less knowledge than me started. They made mistakes, corrected them, and surpassed me. And that was the day I realized winning isn't about being the smartest. It's about being the one who starts first. If you're stuck in endless calculations without ever taking action, this video is for you. Keep watching to discover why even the most ordinary actions can beat extraordinary intelligence every single time. I used to sit quietly for hours by the window, watching the hurried crowd outside and asking myself, why is he rich? A person with no proper education, speaking hesitantly, calculating slowly, and yet he drives the car I dream of, lives in a house I thought I wouldn't be able to afford until I was 60. That question wasn't just jealousy. It was deep confusion. I had studied harder than him, always topping the class, winning international scholarships, speaking 2 languages, thinking critically, and even holding an MBA degree. So why was I stressing over utility bills while he sat leisurely sipping his latte every morning? At first, I consoled myself with thoughts like, maybe he's just lucky, or has someone backing him up. But then I realized this wasn't rare. It turns out there are millions out there who aren't exceptional in education, skills, or IQ, but they have something I didn't: money and freedom. And then I started to doubt myself. Had I been on the wrong path? Had we, the ones labeled smart, since childhood, been playing a game with the rules misunderstood from the start? Smart people are often wrapped in the society's expectations to succeed, to make money, to lead. We are taught that study well, get a good job, earn a high salary, and life will be fine. But what's the reality? I know a friend who was a math genius, always at the top, but ended up becoming a researcher with just enough salary to get by. Meanwhile, Jason, a guy who dropped out of school, now owns 3 car wash businesses, has 15 employees, and is about to open his 4th. You know what's ironic? He still doesn't know how to write a proper email, but he knows how to take action. I used to think all I had to do was keep trying, keep analyzing, keep preparing. But then I realized intelligence isn't a weapon if you only use it to plan without stepping out there and executing. Let's look back. Thomas Edison, the man who invented the light bulb, was once considered slow by his teachers. Walt Disney was fired for lack of creativity. Even Steve Jobs wasn't the tech genius many think he was. He couldn't write code, he didn't create hardware. But he had vision, and he dared to act. What about me? I spent months perfecting a startup plan. I edited every sentence, every chart, every budget line. But I never sent it. I couldn't. Because smart people often fear one thing more than failure: the fear of being judged as not smart enough. Afraid that people would say, "Oh, thought you were so smart, but your business failed?" And that fear turned my intelligence into shackles, keeping me in my comfort zone, never daring to play big. I'm sharing this not to complain. I'm sharing it so you, if you've ever felt like I did, know that you're not alone. And more importantly, you can break free from that cycle. Success is no longer a privilege of the high IQ crowd. It belongs to those who dare to act, dare to fail, and dare to try again. I remember hearing a speaker once say, "Ideas are worth $1. It's the execution of those ideas that's worth millions." That line left me speechless. I realized I wasn't lacking intelligence, I lacked the courage to start and the discipline to keep going. Since that day, I started changing. I no longer waited for the perfect plan to begin. I took action even if I wasn't ready. I made mistakes, learned, got up, and kept moving forward. And then something strange happened. The world didn't care how smart I was. They only cared, did I create real value? If you've ever asked yourself the same question I did, why is that person rich and I'm not? Maybe it's time to change the question. Don't ask what they're good at. Ask, how did they start? And then begin your own journey. Right now, even if you're not ready. That's what I did. And if I can do it, so can you. 2. The legend of intelligence. When I was a child, I was always taught, if you study well, you will have a bright future. In my mind, intelligence was almost like a golden ticket to success. Teachers, parents, society, everyone seemed to sing the same song. The smart ones would go far, while the less intelligent would always be left behind. I clearly remember the proud look in my mother's eyes when I received high marks, and the nod of approval from my teacher every time I answered a difficult question correctly. Those were the moments that made me believe, as long as I had a sharp mind and excellent grades, every door in life would open for me. I carried this belief throughout my school years, then entered university with the dream that the higher I studied, the richer I would become. The more degrees I had, the more valuable I would be in society. And indeed, I studied harder than anyone else. I analyzed, reasoned, and argued like a logical machine. I became the smart kid in the eyes of everyone. But then, after graduation, reality hit me hard. Those who had once studied under me, the ones I thought were less intelligent, were now driving luxury cars, owning their own businesses, or traveling the world, while I was still struggling to find a job, writing countless CVs in the hope that someone would recognize my talent. At that moment, I was lost. I began to question, something isn't right here. Wasn't intelligence supposed to be the golden key? Why were people who weren't as smart as I was more successful? I started observing more closely, digging deeper, and then I discovered something that made me completely change the way I viewed the world. Success, it turns out, is not the reward for the smartest, but the result of those who know how to use what they have in the right way. I once thought billionaires like Richard Branson had to be some kind of hidden genius. But no, the truth is he dropped out of school at 16. He didn't go to college, didn't have an MBA, wasn't an engineer or a doctor. But he had vision, the ability to connect people, and the courage to act even when everyone thought he was crazy. Richard once said, "You don't learn how to swim by reading books. You have to jump in the water." That statement shocked me. My whole life, I had only learned how to swim on paper. Then there's Nikola Tesla, a true genius, who contributed dozens of great inventions to science. His intelligence was extraordinary in the history of mankind. But he died in loneliness and poverty, while those who commercialized his ideas lived in wealth. Tesla was a painful reminder that intelligence is not everything. So what happened? Tesla was a symbol of genius who didn't know how to protect himself in the real world. He had a brilliant mind, but lacked negotiation skills, the ability to build networks, and a sense of financial acumen. On the other hand, Thomas Edison, who was once considered a poor student, had the ability to turn creativity into products and products into assets. Just like Steve Jobs, who dropped out of Reed College and didn't have the solid technical background of many engineers at Apple. But Jobs understood customers, understood experiences, and most importantly, he understood how to make people want what he created. Intelligence helps that cannot be denied, but it will backfire if we keep it locked in our heads without bringing it into the world. It becomes a burden if we're always analyzing but never acting. It is a chain if we use it to find reasons to delay instead of stepping out and trying. I once met a friend, his name is Mark, who studied with me in college. He was never at the top of the class. He was even often criticized by professors for being unserious. But 10 years later, he owned a chain of coffee shops across 5 states. I asked him, "How did you do it?" Mark laughed. "I didn't need to be the smartest. I just needed to dare to start and never give up." When I heard that, it was like an awakening. It turns out that intelligence is not the trump card. What matters is knowing what's important and acting on it. People say Jeff Bezos is smart, and that's true. But no one talks about the fact that in the early days of Amazon, he was knocking on doors selling books. It was his dedication, perseverance, and understanding of the market that made him a billionaire. Success doesn't belong to the idealist, but to the one who dives in. I write these words not to belittle intelligence, but to help you understand. It is a tool, not the result. You may be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't dare to speak, don't dare to step out of your comfort zone, you will always watch others surpass you. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to dare to take one step forward every day. Because in this real world, it's not the fastest, not the smartest, but the one who doesn't stop is the winner. 3. The real reason smart people don't get rich. I once believed that intelligence and extensive knowledge were all it took to open any door. But life's harsh reality taught me a priceless lesson. Intelligence alone is not enough to get you where you want to go without something far more important: action. I clearly remember hearing a story about a maze. Two people stand at the starting point, facing a vast maze, much like the journey of entrepreneurship or pursuing a grand dream. The first person, known as a genius, pulls out paper and pencil, draws a map, and analyzes every twist and turn, considering all the possible scenarios. He studies it so thoroughly that he knows every path, every dead end, without even stepping inside. But strangely, he stands still, never moving. The second person, who no one would call a genius, doesn't know the route. He's not great at calculations, and he doesn't have a map in his hands, but he steps into the maze. He keeps walking. If he takes a wrong turn, he retraces his steps. If he stumbles, he picks himself up. Every step is a lesson, every mistake an opportunity to learn more. And in the end, he's the one who finds the way out first. I saw myself in the first person, full of knowledge but too afraid to take the first step. I used to think, just wait a little longer, take one more course, prepare a little more, and then I'll start. But the truth is, the idea of waiting until I'm ready is often just a trap of fear. I once read about Sara Blakely, the founder of Spanx, a self-made billionaire. When she started, she had no experience in fashion, no MBA, and not even a design. But she took action, step by step, facing rejection after rejection, being ridiculed in meetings. And it was those steps that led her to success. She didn't wait for perfection. She simply dared to begin. I realized, not all smart people are rich because not all smart people dare to fail. Many people who are labeled smart carry an invisible fear of failure. In their minds, the image of being smart is an identity they've built since childhood. And for someone who is smart, failure is not an option. Mistakes are unacceptable. Shame is to be avoided. That ego becomes a fortress, and they'd rather not act than risk losing that facade. I used to be like that. I kept learning more, earning more certificates, gaining more skills. But I never started. I was so good that I locked myself in the prison of analysis. I think of Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks. He grew up in a low-income housing project in Brooklyn. He didn't start with a bright future, and he wasn't a genius from Harvard. But he had a vision. And more importantly, he took action. He experimented, failed, adjusted, and persisted. It was that spirit of engagement that transformed Starbucks from a coffee bean store into a global coffee empire. What bothers me most is not the mistakes I've made. It's the opportunities one missed, simply because I thought, I'm not good enough to begin yet. Overanalysis, the trap of the intelligent, kills action. We think so much that we paralyze ourselves. Every possible negative outcome is scrutinized under a microscope. Every tiny detail dissected to exhaustion. And when we overthink, the opportunity is gone. Someone else has started, and the goal seems further away. I think of Elon Musk, one of the most daring creators of our time. Was he always right? Rockets exploded, Tesla ran out of money, people laughed. But he didn't stop. For Elon, failure wasn't the end. It was simply a test. And it was those moments of try, fail, adjust that took him places no one else dared to go. Meanwhile, I sat there, calculating how many risks I'd face if I failed. I worried about being laughed at, about regretting my decision. But the moment I feared failure, I had already failed. So I began to change. No longer waiting to be good enough, I started right where I was, with everything I had. And as I dared to move forward, things started to unfold. Not as clearly as a map, but enough for me to see the next step. If you're listening to this and you're one of those people who have always been called smart, I want to say this to you. Intelligence is a gift, but that gift only serves its purpose when you use it to take action. Don't let intelligence become a chain that makes you a dreamer who never executes. Because in the end, it's not the smartest who win. It's the ones who dare to begin, the ones who dare to try, the ones who dare to fail. And that person could be you. 4. 2 skills to overcome the smart trap. After reflecting on myself, I realized that the problem wasn't a lack of ideas, knowledge, or intelligence. What I was missing were 2 skills that intelligent people often overlook. These were the skill of action and social intelligence. I used to live as if being smart was all I needed to succeed. But that's not true. Ideas, if they only stay in your head, are like a dry seed. If you don't plant it, water it, and patiently nurture it every day, it will never sprout. Skill number 1, action. I used to write dozens of business plans, sketch out strategies, and read hundreds of books. But the more I read, the more I procrastinated. I wanted everything to be perfect before I started, and as a result, I never started. Then one day, I read about Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. What surprised me wasn't that he had a groundbreaking idea. In fact, he wasn't the first to think of e-commerce. The idea of selling online existed before him. But Bezos did better than anyone else because he acted. He invested all the money he had, persuaded his family to invest, moved into a small warehouse in Seattle, and began. He didn't wait for perfection. He didn't wait to be sure. He simply acted and learned along the way. That's what made Amazon one of the largest e-commerce empires in the world. I learned something important. Success doesn't come from how high your IQ is. It comes from consistent action, every single day, without rest. Action isn't an innate gift. It's not a personality trait that someone has. It's a skill, a habit, something that can be built like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. I started practicing. Every morning, I'd write down 3 things I needed to do, and I had to finish at least one of them, no matter how small. Just do it, and you win. I think about people like Howard Schultz, the man who turned Starbucks from a small shop into a global brand. No one handed him a roadmap, but he kept moving forward. Try, fail, learn, adjust, and then keep moving. And that's what made the difference. I realized sometimes you don't need water that's too deep. You just need to jump in, because you'll learn to swim in the water you're in. In action, that's the first leap. Skill number 2, social intelligence. But action alone isn't enough. I once started several projects, but they all failed not because I lacked ability, but because I couldn't work with others. I talked too much, listened too little. I tried to prove I was smart instead of connecting and creating something bigger together. At that time, I didn't know I was missing a skill even more important than technical skills: social intelligence. Steve Jobs is a vivid example. He wasn't the best technician at Apple. Steve Wozniak, Apple's co-founder, was the real technical genius. But it was Jobs who turned the dream into reality, because he knew how to read people, how to inspire, and most importantly, how to tell stories. Jobs didn't just sell products. He sold a vision. He made his team believe in something bigger than themselves, that they were creating the future. And because of that, they were willing to commit to go all the way with him. I learned social intelligence isn't the ability to talk a lot or to be overly charming. It's the ability to understand people, listen, connect, and lead. I remember an investor once said, "We don't invest in business plans. We invest in people." A business plan, no matter how beautiful, is useless if the person leading it isn't capable of convincing and connecting the team to make it happen. Elon Musk also once stood amidst the ruins of Tesla, drowning in debt, on the brink of bankruptcy. But he still convinced investors, still kept his team's trust, because he knew how to connect with them through his vision and passion. That's social intelligence. I began to change. Instead of focusing on presenting, I learned to ask questions. Instead of asserting, I learned to suggest. And instead of doing things alone, I learned to do them together. Results didn't come immediately, but clearly I began to see the people who truly wanted to go with me. Not because I was smart, but because I understood them. If I could go back in time and talk to my younger self, I would say, don't chase more degrees. Don't wait for everything to be perfect before you start. Just start and learn to go with others. Because in the end, it's not the smartest person who wins. It's the one who knows how to act and knows how to connect, how to turn intelligence into wealth. But even after I began, I still carried a fear with me. The fear of being wrong. The fear of failure. The fear of being judged by others. There was a time when I spent months preparing for a star project. I calculated every detail, made sure everything was perfect. But when I launched it to the market, the product didn't attract anyone. It was a humiliating failure. I couldn't sleep. I tortured myself, thinking, how could I have been so stupid? Then, I remember the story of Howard Schultz, the man who turned Starbucks into a global brand. Before his success, he was rejected 242 times when trying to raise capital. If he had stopped after the 10th rejection, Starbucks would never have existed. I realized something. Failure doesn't mean I'm incapable. It just proves that I had the courage to try. Life will never hand you a perfect roadmap. You'll have to draw each line with your own feet. And every time you stumble, you'll learn something that no classroom can teach you. You don't write your life with perfection. You write it through your mistakes and how you rise after each one. And then I came to another important realization. Success doesn't just come from ideas. It comes from people. I had been so obsessed with the idea of a breakthrough concept that I forgot one crucial thing. No idea, no matter how brilliant, means anything if no one is listening, if no one believes in it, if no one is willing to join in. I used to think Steve Jobs was a tech genius, but then I discovered that he wasn't even the best engineer on the team. What made Jobs great was his ability to inspire, to tell a story, to see what others couldn't, and to attract the best people to his cause. When you step into the world, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you must be the one who knows how to make others believe in your dream. I met with investors, and they didn't choose the project with the most polished financial plan. They chose the leader with the ability to persuade, with a spirit of commitment, with a story big enough to make others want to be part of it. People follow people, not a piece of paper. That's when I started developing another skill beyond logical intelligence, social intelligence. I learned how to connect. I practiced speaking in a way that made others listen. I learned how to listen to understand, not just to respond. And that's what changed the game. Now, when I look back at the journey I've been on, I no longer feel regret over the times when I wasn't good enough. I only regret the moments when I didn't have the courage to take the next step. If you have an idea, a desire, a dream, don't wait for it to be perfect. Start with what you have. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Let your failures become your personal lessons. And above all, don't just focus on perfecting your idea. Connect. Tell a story big enough that others want to be a part of it. Because, in the end, no one succeeds alone. I used to think that wealth was a privilege reserved for genius minds. People born with the ability to analyze like computers, read the market as though they had a crystal ball, and turn ideas into money with just a snap of their fingers. I used to believe that if I wasn't smart enough, I could never be rich. But after years of struggling with my own doubts, I realized a core truth. The real gap between the rich and the poor is not measured by IQ. It's measured by the speed of action. It's not a lack of ideas. Many people, including you and I, have had those brilliant flashes of inspiration. But why do most of us never turn them into reality? Because we become paralyzed by our own thinking. We overanalyze. We overthink. We fear all the possible outcomes. We think we are planning, but in reality, we are procrastinating. We sit there, weighing the options, writing out scenario after scenario, and meanwhile, others are out there acting, failing, fixing, and moving far ahead of us. I remember the story of Sara Blakely, the founder of the famous Spanx brand. She had no fashion experience, no MBA, and started with just $5,000. But she had one thing. She took action, and when she made mistakes, she fixed them. When she hit obstacles, she adapted. Sara once sold fax machines door to door. Who would have thought that someone like her would become the youngest self-made female billionaire in America? She didn't wait for perfection to enter the market. She went out there and learned how to improve along the way. Action always beats intelligence. Every time, everywhere. Because action is what gets you in the game. By being the one to step out into the world, you might slip, but you're also the only one with a chance to cross the finish line. On the other hand, the person who sits, endlessly calculating, will forever remain at the starting line, no matter how sharp their mind is. You can be smart enough to predict every risk, but if you don't act, the only thing you're really guaranteeing is nothing will change. I used to see myself as a marathon runner, but I was only running in my head. Every day, I would imagine myself wealthy, visualize a perfect business plan, dream of an ideal future, then turn off the lights and go to sleep. And the next morning, I woke up in the same spot. Not a single step had been taken. Meanwhile, out there, those who dared to act, though not geniuses, were building their dreams brick by brick. Elon Musk, for example. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny this. He embodies action without waiting. While others were still doubting, still analyzing why private rocket launches were impossible, Elon had already bet everything on SpaceX. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He created that moment by jumping in, failing, trying again. And he turned the impossible into reality. We don't need to become Elon Musk or Sarah Blakely to change our lives. But we do need to learn one thing from them. Stop procrastinating. Start now. You don't need to be right the first time. You just need to dare to take the first step. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need one small action today. Make a call, write an email, sell the first product, meet the first customer. Every million-dollar journey begins with a small but consistent action. Don't let your smart mind become the trap that holds you back. Don't sit there day after day, calculating yourself to death without ever starting. Don't wait until the end of your life to look back and think, I had that idea before they did, but did nothing about it. I've been there, and now I'm choosing a different path. I choose action, not perfect, not certain, not guaranteed, but real. Progress. And you can too. Start now. If you fail, fix it. But don't sit there waiting for another day. Ultimately, what I've learned is this. Intelligence doesn't make the difference. Action does. You don't need to wait until you're good enough or perfect. The truth is there will never be a perfect time. But you can start right now, even if it's just one small step. And every one of those steps will take you to places you never imagined. Thank you for spending your precious time listening. Your presence here is the motivation for us to continue sharing true stories that bring hope and strength to those still finding their way. If today's story has touched you, please leave a comment and share your own experience. And if you're struggling with something in your life, let us know. We're here to listen and create content that can truly help you. Don't forget to like and share this video if you found value in every word. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next videos. Genuine, inspiring journeys that just might change the way you see life. See you in the next stories. And remember, start, even if you're not ready yet.